Hi, I'm Mary Coe, one of the instructors at SFBI. Welcome back to SFBI's online baking series. Today I'm going to be demoing gum paste. Gum paste is actually one of the pastes that you can use to make flours for cakes, for pastries. The thing that sort of makes gum paste a little bit more unique is that you actually are going to be having some sort of a gum product in there. And what the gum product does is it lends a little bit of strength to the dough. And it also enables it to dry really, really hard. So you're actually able to brush it with color, you're able to paint it, and so it lends itself very, very well to making really, really delicate flours. First of all, let's go over the materials that we're going to be needing today. We're going to be needing the gum paste. Today we're going to be making gum paste flours just with a ready-made paste, but we'll go over a few other types as well. We need florist wire, we need cornstarch, we need the cutters, some egg white that we're going to be using for glue, petal dust and luster dust, food coloring in both brown and green. We need leaf and petal impression mats as well as a sponge mat, fondant tools, artist brushes, a rolling pin, Ziploc bag, some florist foam, wire cutters, scissor, florist tape, as well as another rolling pin that we can actually use to shape our petals when they're drying. Today we're going to be making a lily out of the gum paste, and the first thing that we're going to be starting with is actually the center of the lily, which is the pistil and the stamen. So for the center of a lily we're going to need actually one pistil, which we will start with, and then we will move into the stamens. To start with the pistil, we're going to be taking a piece of gum paste, and it's really important that you take whatever gum paste you're not using and keep it in the Ziploc bag because it will dry out quickly. That gum product is in there to actually make it dry quickly, and if you don't keep it put away, it's going to dry out much too quickly and get crusty. So we're looking for a piece of gum paste that's going to be a ball, say approximately ½ an inch in diameter. And you're just going to shape that into a ball. And then on a nice smooth side, you want the smooth side to be showing up. We're going to be going back and forth, sort of flattening out part of this while keeping that ball intact. Okay, and we're looking at trying to get this approximately 2–2.5 inches in length. The tricky part now is inserting the florist wire into that. We're going to take a piece of florist wire that's approximately 4 inches in length and brush it with some egg white. In this case we're using egg white for glue. We can also get an old dried out piece of gum paste, soak that for about ½ an hour or so, and we're going to be able to use that when it dissolves as gum as well. What I'm doing now is taking that moistened wire and just really, really slowly putting it into the base and trying to move it up there without poking through. Okay. At this point we're going to be taking anything that we form and putting it right in the florist. Okay. This is probably going to take approximately I would say at least half a day. It's not very much mass to that, but it's going to be taking at least half a day to dry out. Most gum paste you're going to want to be leaving overnight. So the pistil is formed. We only need one pistil per lily. Now we want to go ahead and form the stamen. We're going to need 6 stamen for the lily. This time we're looking at approximately 1/8 of an inch in diameter. So it's going to be fairly small. Again, we just want to roll that out, got a nice shape there. Just dip the tip of the florist wire right in that egg white. And attach it. Okay, you've got to be fairly careful with it. It's very pliable right now. As soon as this dries, it's going to be really nice and hard. Okay, so we'll do that one more time. Go right in there to dry. Again, about 1/8 of an inch. tip of that wire into the egg white and just put the little ball there, and we're just trying to form a little bit of a point on that without handling it too much. Okay, so once you have your pistil and your 6 stamens formed and drying, you're ready to move on to the next stage. The next step to forming the lily is actually going to be cutting out and drying the petals. The petals usually need to be dried at least overnight to enable you to handle them enough to be able to paint them. So I'm just going to be starting with a nice soft piece of gum paste. Again, make sure that it's actually stored in an airtight container before you actually use it. And we're going to be using, in this case, some cornstarch to keep it from sticking. Okay, so make sure that there's plenty of cornstarch on the surface as well as on top of the gum paste. We're going to roll this out fairly thin. As I said before, one of the advantages of having gum in this product is the fact that it makes a really, really strong, pliable dough. If we were to try this with straight fondant, for instance, we would never be able to get it as thin as we're getting it right now. We're looking at getting this between a 1/16 of an inch and a 32nd of an inch thick. Okay, and for the lily, we are going to be cutting out 6 petals in all. Usually the cutters come in 2 different widths. If you are able to get 2 different widths, you're going to want 3 of the wider and 3 of the narrower. Okay, so we're just going to cut 3 of each. So immediately what we're going to do is remove them and put them into that Ziploc bag so they don't start drying. And we'll just work on one at a time. When you're working with gum paste, the thing that makes it a really, really nice product to work with is the fact that we can get this so thin and lifelike. Now that we have our petals cut and ready to go, we want to make sure that they sort of have a lifelike appearance to them. So to enable that, what we're going to do is use an impression mat. The impression mat actually replicates the texture of a petal, and you can either get a plastic mat, you can also get a ceramic impression mold, and I've also seen them in metal as well. But you can see the veins that are going to be actually impressed into the petal. So what we're going to do is get one of the petals out of the bag, press it onto the impression mat, and it's just going to give a nice subtle impression. And then we also want to make sure that the edges of this petal are really nice and thin to give it a lifelike appearance. Okay, so we're just going to be rolling the ball along the outside. It doesn't matter if it's a little bit uneven. And you're going to lift this up, turn it over. Use a little bit of our egg white glue. Put the wire and pinch it onto the wire. You have to make sure you work fairly quickly because otherwise your gum paste will dry out. Then we're going to be taking that petal and draping it over the rolling pin, making sure that this joint here is angled outwards as opposed to having your petal down in this position. If it's in this position, it's not going to be in the correct position for you to be able to assemble your lily later on, so this is a really very important part. The last thing we need to put together our lily is actually going to be the leaves. So for each lily, usually 2 leaves works out well. I've taken a little bit of our green food coloring and tinted some of the gum paste a nice color. If it's too bright of a green, just add a little bit of brown food coloring as well, and it's going to tone that down a little bit. Again, we're just going to be rolling this out to approximately 1/16 of an inch. And it's important when you're making the gum paste flowers to use the correct shape leaf. It makes a huge difference when you're making a lifelike looking flower. In this case, it actually works very well to use just another cutting of the lily petal itself. And we're going to handle it basically the same way that we did the petal. So we're going to cut 2 out per flower. Again, we're going to take that impression mat, press it down, this time we aren't going to be rolling the edges. We want a little bit of a blunter edge to the leaf, a little bit of egg white, and we're going to be attaching that in the same way. The one thing that we're going to be doing a little bit differently is we're not actually going to be drying this over the dowel rod. We just sort of want to have a little bit more of a lifelike appearance to it, and we're just going to be placing it just like that, lying flat on the sheet pan. Just try to wrinkle it up a little bit to give it a little bit more of a lifelike appearance as opposed to being a flat appearance, but that's all you're going to have to do. Again, 2 of the leaves, 3 of the narrow petals, and 3 of the wide petals. Now that the gum paste has been drying for about 24 hours, we're about ready to start painting this. The nice thing about gum paste, as I said earlier, is that it does get so nice and hard when it dries. You can actually paint as opposed to just brush dust on it. If you do want to use a luster dust, which are specifically made for gum paste flowers, but paint it on for a little bit more of a vibrant look, what you're going to want to do is get some clear alcohol, dilute it with some of the clear alcohol, and you could just use it as paint. This case we want something that's going to be a little bit more subtle in appearance, so we're just going to be using the powder itself. So let's start with the center of the flower with the pistil. In this case, what we're going to be doing is starting at the base with a green, coming up with a nice hot pink, and then probably like a little bit more of a dusting of green on the top. So we'll start with that green. Some of that pink, and you want to get this as subtle as possible. And then on the top, you want to put a little bit more green. Okay, so that is going to be for the pistil. Now we're going to go ahead and paint the stamen. Stamen's going to be very simple. All we're going to be doing is taking some brown food coloring and painting it completely brown. Okay. So now we're going to go ahead and paint the petals. For this particular lily, what we're going to do is, again, start with the green at the base, bring the pink up the center of the petal, and in this case we're going to paint some really delicate brown dots with our brown food coloring once we finish that. So again, we're going to start with that nice vibrant green at the base. And just up the center, we're going to be bringing that pink. And just try to make it really nice and subtle and feather off the edges a little bit so it looks a little bit more natural. So once you have the color on the petal, the next step is going to be putting some very fine dots with that brown food coloring up the center. So get a fine brush, and we're just going to be putting some differing sizes of delicate dots. You can actually also get a marker that has edible ink on it that you can get the same effect from. Okay, now it's time to assemble the lily. First thing we want to do is actually start with the center of the lily, which would be the pistil and the stamen. I have some pre-cut florist tape here, as you can see. So we're going to start with the pistil, and we want to attach one stamen at a time to give it a more natural look. You want to make sure that the stamen is at a lower height, obviously, than the top of the pistil. And we want to make sure that each stamen is a little bit different in height. It's going to give it a little bit more of a natural appearance. Okay, so once those are all attached, you just want to make sure that they're spread out evenly, and it's time to start attaching the petals. If you did in fact work with two different widths of lily petals, what you're going to want to do is start with 3 wider petals to start with. And again, we're going to be working one at a time and attaching these. Once the 3 wider ones are attached, you want to make sure they're spread out evenly. If you do have to bend the wire, make sure that you actually are holding onto the wire itself and not the gum paste. The gum paste might break because it's brittle at this point. Now we're going to attach the other 3 petals in between. Finally, we want to take the leaves and attach those down at the base. So now that we've finished our lily, the last thing to do is place it on the cake. As you can see, I have some other flowers that I've made out of gum paste. We have some medium orchids, stephanotis, hydrangeas, and of course the lilies. I picked the lily to teach today because I think it's one of the more majestic and striking of the flowers. There's also a lot of different variations that you can make and sort of change it a little bit, but the actual basic shape is actually really quite useful to use. The one thing that I did do is wrap the base in a ribbon. You want to make sure that your wire is never showing actually on the cake. There's 2 ways to accomplish that. It's either wrapping it with a nice satin ribbon, or you can actually insert a hollow dowel rod in the cake and then put your wiring in there. You're never going to want to put your wiring directly into the cake itself. So the last thing to do is actually just place this on the cake. As you can see, it can take a really simple cake and really make it something special and highlight all of the gum paste that you've taken so long to create. Obviously, it does take a while to create these flowers. The nice thing about gum paste is you can work fairly far in advance. Practice it, get it exactly the way you want it, and it's absolutely fine to use it a few weeks down the road as long as it's kept in a nice airtight container. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time in the SFBI Baking Institute online baking series.